The silvery glow of the Galactic Council's orbital station shimmered against the vast backdrop of stars. From her quarters, Ambassador Helen Voss stared out at the infinity of space, her mind racing. The emergency session would begin in less than an hour, and already the rumors were spreading like wildfire. Humans had attacked a Larash trading convoy. The weight of the accusation pressed heavily on her chest. She turned to her aide, a wiry young man named Aaron Lane, who was scrolling through reports on a sleek holopad. "Anything yet?" Helen asked, her voice steady but edged with tension. Aaron shook his head. "Just more of the same. The Larash are claiming their convoy was fired on without provocation. Weapon signatures match human tech." He glanced up, his brow furrowed. "But something about this feels off." "Everything about it feels off," Helen muttered. A soft chime interrupted them. The council summons had arrived. Helen took a deep breath, straightened her navy blue uniform, and stepped into the corridor, where a polished transport pod awaited. The journey to the council chamber was silent. The station's gleaming architecture loomed around her, a reminder of humanity's precarious position. They were newcomers here, the fledgling member of a coalition of ancient, advanced civilizations. When Helen entered the chamber, 100 alien faces turned toward her. Some were inscrutable, with unreadable expressions, others were openly hostile. At the center of the room stood Crix Tal, the Volgon counselor. Tall and imposing, with iridescent scales shimmering under the chamber's pale light, Crix Tal radiated an air of triumph. "Ah, Ambassador Voss," Crix Tal drawled, his voice a rich baritone with a slight hiss. "We were beginning to wonder if you'd attend." "Given the gravity of the situation, of course." Helen met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "I wouldn't miss it, counselor. Gravity does tend to attract attention." A ripple of murmurs passed through the chamber. Helen made her way to her seat, her movements deliberate. She couldn't afford to appear rattled. The session began with a holographic projection. It displayed grainy footage of ships firing on a Larash convoy. The weapons used bore a striking resemblance to human designs. Crix Tal stepped forward, gesturing to the images. "This," he declared, "is the truth of humanity. A species born in violence, incapable of peace. This unprovoked attack demonstrates that their inclusion in our union was a grievous error." Helen clenched her jaw. She rose, smoothing the front of her uniform. "Counselors," she began, her voice clear and unwavering, "humanity does not deny its history. We are a species that has known conflict. But we joined this union to change, to grow alongside the rest of you. And this attack? It is not who we are." "Words," Crix Tal interrupted, his tone dripping with disdain. "But the evidence? It speaks for itself." Helen held his gaze. "Then let's examine it thoroughly. I propose an impartial investigation. If humanity is guilty, we will accept the consequences. But if this is a misunderstanding, or worse, a fabrication, then it is our duty to uncover the truth." A murmur spread through the council. Some members seemed to consider her words, while others shook their heads, skeptical. A Larash representative, a diminutive figure with translucent, shimmering skin, spoke up. "We do not wish for conflict. But the loss of our convoy cannot be ignored. If this investigation reveals human culpability, reparations must follow." Helen inclined her head. "Agreed." For a moment, silence reigned. Then, to Helen's relief, Counselor Zeiner of the Tarvak, a staunch advocate of fairness, raised his voice. "The ambassador's proposal is reasonable. Let us not rush to judgment before all facts are laid bare." It was enough. The council voted narrowly in favor of an investigation, granting Helen 3 days to produce her findings. As the chamber emptied, Crix Tal approached, his serpentine eyes glinting with malice. 3 days, he said, his tone soft but cutting. "You won't find what doesn't exist, Ambassador. Humanity has sealed its fate." Helen refused to flinch. "If there's one thing humans excel at, Counselor, it's defying expectations." Back in her quarters, Helen gathered her team. Aaron, ever diligent, had already begun cross-referencing the footage with known human military operations. Beside him sat Ziner, who had offered his assistance after the session. "We need to start with the weapons signatures," Helen said, pacing the room. "If they don't match anything in active use, we might have a lead." Ziner nodded, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "The energy signatures are peculiar. They don't align perfectly with standard human designs. It's subtle, but there's enough variance to suggest tampering." "Tampering by whom?" Aaron asked. "That's what we need to find out," Helen replied. Hours passed in tense collaboration. Data flowed across screens, algorithms worked overtime to decode patterns. At last, Ziner spoke. "There's something here. These energy signatures, they resemble human weaponry but carry traces of Volgon technology." Helen's heart raced. "Volgon?" "It's circumstantial, but the cloaking patterns are distinct. It's possible someone modified human designs to implicate your species." Helen's mind whirled. Krixtal had the means and the motive. But a theory wasn't enough, she needed solid proof. The next step became clear, she had to find someone who had witnessed the attack firsthand. Aaron spoke up, his voice cautious. "There's a Laresh trader who survived. They're being treated in the med bay." Helen's eyes sharpened. "Arrange a meeting. Quietly. We can't let this leak before we have something concrete." As the team dispersed, Helen sat alone, staring out at the stars again. Doubts clawed at her resolve, but she pushed them aside. Humanity's future was at stake, and she would not fail. The station's lights dimmed as the artificial night cycle began. Somewhere in the shadows, Krixtal was plotting his next move. But Helen was determined to be ready. The game had begun, and humanity's survival depended on her playing it better than anyone else. The sterile hum of the Galactic Council's med bay resonated faintly in Helen's ears as she stepped into the private recovery room. The Laresh trader lay on a hover bed, their translucent skin glowing faintly in the dim light. A soft film covered their wide, reflective eyes, a natural defense against the station's artificial brightness. Helen approached cautiously, her diplomatic instincts honed to avoid unnecessary alarm. "Trader Drekla," she began, her voice soft but firm, "I'm Ambassador Helen Voss. I'm here to learn the truth about the attack you survived." Drekla's head tilted slightly, their voice an eerie hum. "Truth? Does your kind seek truth, or simply its appearance?" Helen held her ground. "Humanity's survival in this union depends on that truth. If you have any doubt about our commitment to justice, let me prove you wrong." Drekla studied her in silence for a moment, then exhaled a sound akin to a sigh. "I will tell you what I saw. But I do not trust you." "Trust isn't necessary," Helen replied, taking out her recording device. "Just tell me everything." Drekla hesitated before speaking, their words slow and deliberate. "The ships came from nowhere. Their hulls were dark, with no visible insignia. They moved with precision, targeting our engines first. The weapons, they sounded human, but the tactics were too calculated, too swift. It was as if they wanted us to believe they were human." Helen's pulse quickened. "Did you see any identifying marks or technology?" "No marks. But their weapons, there was something odd about them. The impact patterns were not consistent with human projectiles." That was enough for Helen to know she was on the right track. She thanked Drekla, assuring them their testimony would be handled discreetly. As she left the med bay, Aaron was waiting in the corridor, his face tight with urgency. "We've got another problem," he said. "Krixtal's already making moves. He's feeding more evidence to the Council, including some kind of transmission he claims proves human involvement." Helen frowned. "We need to get ahead of this. Is Ziner still working on the energy signatures?" Aaron nodded. "He says he's found something big, but he wants to confirm it before he shares." Back in their temporary headquarters, Ziner greeted them with a grim expression. The Tarvak's reptilian features seemed unusually tense as he pointed to a holographic projection hovering above his console. I've dissected the weapon signatures further, Zeiner said. The energy traces mimic human weapons, but they're not an exact match. More importantly, they include a secondary residue unique to Volgon cloaking devices. Helen's eyes narrowed. Volgon technology. Krixtal. It's not definitive proof, Zeiner cautioned. The connection is subtle. But the pattern is too specific to be coincidence. Helen leaned forward, her mind racing. How could they have modified the weapons to implicate us? By using salvaged human tech, likely from past conflicts. The Volgans have had centuries to gather such materials, Zeiner explained. But there's one more thing. He zoomed in on a section of the data. This specific cloaking residue? It's from a prototype system. Only a handful of Volgon ships would have access to it. Helen's pulse surged. This was the lead they needed. If we can tie this to a specific Volgon fleet, we'll have the evidence to dismantle Krixtal's claims. Zeiner nodded. I'm already running cross-references through Union databases. But we'll need more than this. Krixtal is too entrenched to go down easily. As the investigation deepened, Helen decided to take a risk. She scheduled a private meeting with Counselor Zorvith, a neutral but fair-minded representative of the Salix Consortium. Zorvith's species valued logic and evidence above all else, making them a potential ally. The meeting took place in a secluded observation lounge, far from prying eyes. Zorvith's segmented, metallic form glinted under the soft lighting as they turned their multifaceted eyes toward Helen. You wish to sway me, Ambassador, Zorvith said, their voice a harmonious blend of tones. Why should I not trust Krixtal's evidence? It appears compelling. Because it's a fabrication, Helen replied, her tone unwavering. We've discovered anomalies in the energy signatures of the weapons used in the attack. They point to Volgon technology, specifically a prototype cloaking device. Zorvith tilted their head. An intriguing claim. Yet without irrefutable proof, it is but conjecture. Helen expected this response. I understand your skepticism. But consider Krixtal's history. The Volgon Empire has always opposed humanity's inclusion in the Union. Isn't it plausible they would exploit a situation like this? Zorvith was silent for a moment, their metallic appendages clicking faintly. I will not take sides without sufficient evidence. But I will ensure the investigation proceeds fairly. It wasn't the outright support Helen had hoped for, but it was a step in the right direction. The next day, Aaron rushed into Helen's quarters, his expression pale. We've been warned off. Helen arched an eyebrow. Warned? A message came through an anonymous channel. It said, stop your investigation, or face the consequences. Helen's jaw tightened. Krixtal is getting desperate. That means we're close. Aaron hesitated. It also means we're in danger. If they're willing to threaten us, they might escalate. Helen nodded grimly. We proceed, but carefully. They want us to back down because they're afraid of what we'll find. By the third evening, Zeiner's analysis paid off. He identified a specific Volgon ship, the Vortex Claw, that had docked at a neutral station near the Laresh convoy's route shortly before the attack. The ship was equipped with the prototype cloaking device and had a history of covert operations. This is our smoking gun, Zeiner said. If we can confirm the Vortex Claw was in the area during the attack, Krixtal's narrative will collapse. Helen's heart pounded. How do we get that confirmation? Zeiner's expression darkened. That's the hard part. The Volgans won't willingly provide their logs, and any attempt to access them covertly would risk severe repercussions. Helen weighed the options. We'll need a testimony. Someone who can link Krixtal directly to this operation. The final piece came together when Aaron intercepted a communication from a disillusioned Volgon operative. The message was brief but damning. I have information about the Vortex Claw. Meet me at Dock 17. Helen didn't hesitate. She arrived at the meeting point under the cover of darkness, her every step echoing in the quiet corridors. A shadowed figure emerged, their voice low and weary. Krixtal ordered the operation, the operative whispered. The attack was staged to frame humanity. They wanted you expelled from the Union. Helen's blood boiled, but she kept her composure. Why are you telling me this? Because Krixtal's ambition threatens even our own people. Use this information wisely. The operative vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving Helen with the final piece she needed. As she prepared her presentation for the council, Helen felt a spark of hope. The threads of deception were unraveling, and she was ready to expose the truth. But the fight wasn't over yet. Krixtal wouldn't go down without a battle. The Galactic Council chamber was buzzing with tension as Helen Voss walked in, her footsteps deliberate, her face a mask of calm resolve. Alien dignitaries murmured amongst themselves, their voices hushed but urgent. The air crackled with anticipation. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Humanity's place in the Union, its future among the stars, hung in the balance. Krixtal stood at the center of the room, his iridescent scales gleaming under the chamber's artificial light. He radiated confidence, but Helen noticed the subtle rigidity in his posture. He was prepared for battle, but she suspected he didn't know just how prepared she was. As Helen approached the speaker's podium, Krixtal addressed the assembly, his voice smooth and commanding. Esteemed counselors, we gather today to address a grievous matter. The evidence I have presented is clear and irrefutable. Humanity has betrayed the principles of this union, and their inclusion was a mistake. He gestured toward the holographic projection of the convoy attack, a grim replay of destruction. This is who they are. A species incapable of peace. The murmurs grew louder, but Helen raised a hand, and the room fell silent. She stepped forward, her gaze sweeping across the chamber. Counselors, I respect the gravity of this situation. And I thank Counselor Krixtal for his passionate commitment to uncovering the truth. But passion without facts is dangerous. Today, I will show you the truth he has conveniently omitted. Krixtal's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Helen activated her own holographic display, her voice calm yet firm. This is the official energy signature data from the attack. At first glance, it appears to match human technology. But upon deeper analysis, she zoomed in on the energy patterns. You'll notice an anomaly. A secondary residue embedded within the weapon signatures. The hologram shifted, highlighting the irregular patterns. Zeiner, seated among the council, spoke up, his voice lending weight to Helen's claim. The residue is unique to Volgon prototype cloaking systems. Systems that are not accessible to humanity, or any other species. A ripple of surprise swept through the chamber. Helen continued, her tone unwavering. This residue ties the attack to Volgon technology. More specifically, to the Vortex Claw, a Volgon ship equipped with this prototype system. Records show the Vortex Claw docked near the convoy's route shortly before the attack. Gasps echoed around the room. Krixtal stepped forward, his voice sharp. This is conjecture. Where's your proof that this ship, or my people, are involved? Helen didn't flinch. She activated another projection, a recording of the disillusioned Volgon operative. The figure's voice echoed through the chamber, clear and damning. Counselor Krixtal ordered the operation. The attack was staged to frame humanity. He seeks to expel them from the Union to further Volgon dominance. The room erupted in chaos. Counselors shouted over one another, some demanding answers, others calling for order. Krixtal's confident facade cracked as he turned to Helen, his voice a venomous hiss. A desperate ploy, Ambassador. A fabrication designed to shift blame. Helen didn't rise to the bait. If it's a fabrication, let us verify it. I propose an independent audit of the Vortex Claw's logs and systems. If I'm wrong, humanity will accept the consequences. But if I'm right... Her words hung in the air like a challenge. Counselor Zorvith, ever the voice of logic, spoke up. The proposal is reasonable. Let us proceed with the audit. Krixtal protested, but the council voted overwhelmingly in favor. The audit team, led by neutral Salix officials, was dispatched immediately. The chamber fell into an uneasy silence as they waited for the results. Hours later, the audit team returned, their leader, a Salix official named Irith, addressing the council. Our findings are conclusive. The Vortex Claws logs were partially erased, but fragments remain. They show the ship was in proximity to the Laresh convoy at the time of the attack. Helen felt a surge of vindication, but she remained composed. And the weapons? Irith nodded. The residue matches the prototype cloaking system. The weapons used in the attack were modified human designs, fabricated to implicate humanity. A collective gasp swept through the chamber. Krikstal's scales darkened, a Volgon expression of anger. This is a conspiracy. A smear campaign against my people. But Irith raised a hand. We also uncovered encrypted transmissions sent from the Vortex Claw directly to your office, Counselor Krikstal. Their content corroborates the operative's testimony. The chamber descended into uproar. Krikstal's allies looked uneasy, while many counselors openly denounced him. Ziner rose, his voice cutting through the chaos. This is an attack not just on humanity, but on the integrity of our union. I moved to strip Krikstal of his position and launch a full investigation into Volgon activities. The motion was seconded by Zorvith, and within minutes, the council voted overwhelmingly in favor. Krikstal was escorted from the chamber, his protests echoing hollowly against the walls. As the session adjourned, Helen stepped outside, the tension finally releasing from her shoulders. Aaron and Ziner joined her, their expressions a mix of relief and exhaustion. You did it, Aaron said, his voice tinged with awe. Humanity's still standing. For now, Helen replied, though a small smile tugged at her lips. But this was just one battle. The fight for our place in the stars is far from over. Ziner inclined his head. You've proven humanity's resilience and commitment to justice. That will not be forgotten. As the trio gazed out at the stars, Helen allowed herself a moment of quiet triumph. Krikstal's scheme had been exposed, and humanity had earned a reprieve. But the galaxy was vast, its challenges unending. And Helen knew she would face them head-on, with the same resolve that had brought her here. The stars stretched endlessly before her, a reminder of the boundless possibilities and the equally boundless threats. But tonight, at least, she had one.